So tell me about your new movie.
So the movie is called Nice Guy Johnny, and it's a look at what it's like to chase a dream and how you inevitably will probably disappoint some people when you do chase that dream. So Johnny is a sports radio talk show host at a small station in Oakland. He's working the overnights. He's not making any money, but he made a deal with his fiance that if he wasn't making X amount of dollars by the time they got married, he would take a job back in New York that her father has arranged for him, and therefore give up the dream of a career in sports broadcasting. And he comes to New York, and the first thing he does is he goes to see his uncle, who's a bartender in New York. That's the character I play. I find out he's 24 and getting married. I think that's mistake number one. Secondly, he's giving up what I think is the greatest job any kid could ever have, talking sports on the radio all day. So I decide I'm going to take him out to the Hamptons with me for the weekend and try and talk some sense into him and hopefully derail these plans.
So what gave you the idea for this movie?
A couple of years ago, I had a conversation with my agents, and they said that would I consider taking an open directing assignment? That there was some interest from the studios in my directing a big budget mainstream romantic comedy. I wasn't interested. They told me about the potential paycheck attached to one of these gigs, and I thought, okay, maybe I should look at these. I read a bunch of scripts, almost came close to saying yes to one of them, but in the end, I said no because I thought, I like the movies I make. I mean, they are smaller, but they're personal little films, and that's what I love doing. That's the dream, if you will. Mm-hmm. And then the gig back in New York, the big money job that awaited me was what I saw as some form of a compromise. So that wrestling with taking the studio job versus continuing and making these small films is what inspired the telling of Nice Guy Johnny.
That's interesting. Yeah. Talk about the casting, because really you have two up-and-coming stars in this.
In the past, anytime I've made a film, I make my movies in New York, and we'll audition these great young actors, and we'll find someone, and we'll think, all right, we found our female lead, only to have the financier tell us, actually, we have not found her because she's an unknown, and you need something of a name for that part. Mm-hmm. So on this film, given that we made it for a lower budget, I went to our casting director and I said, remember, all those actors that we've wanted to cast in the past, those kids who are knocking on the door, who are good enough to get the lead roles, but they don't get them because they don't have a name yet. Mm-hmm. Let's cast this film with those people. Let's maybe use this film as an opportunity to break some young actors. And there's three in particular that are fantastic, but one, Carrie Bechet, is the female lead, explodes on screen. Everyone who sees the film is blown away by her. She's already gotten signed immediately by a huge agency out in LA, had a meeting with Steven Spielberg, cast in the next Kevin Smith movie, so that happened like that. Matt Bush, who plays Nice Guy Johnny, was another great find for us. He had never had the lead in a film before. He had some small parts, but he showed up with such enthusiasm and determination, and all of my scenes are opposite him. So he really changed my game. I mean, he came ready to play and determined to take me down. So much so that the first scene that we shot, me and him together, I had to reshoot because I was ill-prepared to deal with what he was doing, and then there's a third girl in it, Anna Wood, who had a tiny part in the movie, but it was so good that we just kept writing additional scenes and new lines for her, and I'm working with all three of them again, hopefully on the next one.
Wow!
Yeah.
What a compliment!
Yeah, no, it was pretty great. The producer and I have been talking, and the crew, talking about, like, you work with these young people who love it in such a way that, the longer you do anything, you get a little jaded, maybe you take some things for granted. Mm-hmm. They don't. Like, they had such enthusiasm that it kind of reinvigorated us and made us fall in love with the process of making movies all over again. So. Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's certainly exciting to have it here at the Austin Film Festival, too.
Yeah, well, for me, I got my start at a film festival back in '95 at Sundance. Over the years, we always take our films out to festivals. And you always find the best audiences. You know, the great thing about the Austin Film Festival is there's a focus on screenwriting. You know, that's my primary love. It's how I got into the business. So even last night at the party, meeting some young screenwriters and talking to them about their process, my process. There's also a ton of film students here. So, you know, when you can take your film and, you know, there's always the great thrill of projecting it in a theater with a packed house of people who really love movies. That's one thing that's great about festivals. But the other thing is sort of more that meet and greet stuff when you're doing the parties and the panels and you get to meet, you know, versions of yourself when you were, you know, 23 years old. And that's pretty exciting.
Oh, that's really nice of you. Well, and I mean, you have a lot of directing credits to your name. Is that something you really enjoy, maybe more than acting, or in conjunction with it?
Yeah, no, I enjoy it much more than acting. You know, the acting is fun, and I only got into it when I made my very first film, Brothers McMullen, just because I really didn't know any actors. So I kind of wrote that part for myself. And then after the film, people said, oh, you know, you're a pretty good actor, you should think about it. And I really had no interest, and I just, you know, I made a couple more, 2 more of my little films, and then this offer came along for Saving Private Ryan. And then after Private Ryan, then it was a real eye-opener for me, and I finally felt confident enough to go out and try and act in other people's films. But the primary love has always been as a writer, and then a writer-director.
Well, I loved doing Saving Private Ryan.
Oh, thank you.
Great
Yeah,
job.
yeah.
So I guess with the film festival, though, it's also going to be the 15th anniversary of Brothers McMullen. So
Yeah.
what do you think of them doing that for you?
Very cool. You know, I have not seen McMullen, I bet, in, you know, almost 15 years.
Yeah.
So it'll be very interesting to sit in the back row and watch a little bit of that. But I still can't believe that it's been 15 years. I mean, it kind of flew by. But then at the same time, you know, we look at the changes in the indie film landscape, and you know, a lot has changed since McMullen. You know, back with that film, you know, indie films that came out theatrically were sort of few and far between, and the expectations of what they would do at the box office were very low. And then McMullen and some other films around that time sort of changed the conversation. And then we enjoyed 10 years of these indie films doing great business. And in a weird way, we've kind of come full circle again. Like, the indie films don't perform theatrically the way they did during that heyday. And that's even why, you know, on this film, Nice Guy Johnny, we're trying, you know, it comes out next Tuesday on October 26th. We're trying a brand new release platform, and only offering it up digitally, you know, via iTunes and Xbox and places like that. A big component is on demand. Also, we've collapsed the DVD window, all because what existed in '95 for indie film theatrically just doesn't exist today anymore. So it's kind of interesting to see where we are.
Well, do you think in a way that kind of opens up more avenues, though, for people to get their movies out there, maybe even the smaller guy than, you know, to be able to do that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it changes the game, because what it's done is we can now reach such a far wider audience than ever before. You know, we have access to everybody's living room and everybody's computer. And people now are, you know, much more comfortable watching movies on their iPads or on their computers, or streaming from their computers to their flat screens, or going on demand and ordering the movies immediately. You know, the alternative would be to open up in New York and LA on 2 screens, keep your fingers crossed that you did enough business to get to 3 more cities 2 weeks later. And, you know, a lot of small films never come to a place like Austin. You know, even when we're walking around, people are like, oh, you know, I always have to wait for your movies to come out on DVD before I see them, because, you know, I live here, or I live in St. Louis, or I live in a suburb that, you know, is nowhere near an art house theater. So now, you know, there's an impatient audience out there, and now we can deliver our films directly to them when they see me talking to you, or see me on the Today Show, or wherever else you might hear about a film.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool platform, and it's certainly different, and just because it doesn't come out in the theater doesn't mean it's not going to be profitable in any way.
Oh, no, just the opposite. The thing that happens with theatrical is it costs so much to market those movies that, you know, even the distribution companies will talk about them just being a loss leader. They just use it to sort of help push the DVD and help push the pay cable sale. So we realized, why put ourselves behind the 8 ball with a theatrical release? Why not just go, straight out to where the people are actually, or how the people are actually watching these movies?
Yeah. So what's up next for you?
So what's up next? I mentioned that I'm going to work with these 3 actors again. If all goes well, we'll probably start shooting February, March back in New York. Yeah. And it's an ensemble look at kind of like what I do. It's called Under Blue Suburban Skies, and it's a look at people in the burbs and their relationships. Another one of my comedy dramas.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Good deal. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.